Israel's war is just and Hamas must be eliminated, and it's foolish to think a two-state solution is going to emerge while so many Palestinians still reject the existence of a Jewish state. These are the words of former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper. And I want to share with you what he said. This is from a recent article in the National Post that he put out, and he shares his reflections on the Israel-Hamas war. And before reading his article to you, I just want to say beforehand that most of the things he said I agree with, but there's actually a few things that I disagree with. And when we get to them, I'll explain why I disagree with them. But let's get going. During the night of October 7th, my wife Laureen woke me to show horrifying images from Israel appearing on her cell phone. Like millions in Israel and around the world, we were shocked and sickened on multiple levels. We'd already spent a year and a half watching the unprovoked onslaught of the Russian military on its peaceful Ukrainian neighbour. We'd seen the dead bodies, the broken families, and the shelled-out communities. It is sadly only one of many violent conflicts in the world today. Each such image wounds our hearts. But this was different. The systemic nature of the killing and the evident glee with which it was being undertaken by its participants betrayed something darker than war itself. It recalled the things my father's world had witnessed. This was not random murder. It was more than some settling of intercommunal scores. It was beyond even brutal military action. These were acts of extermination. The killing of no mere enemy, but of those who, in the killer's eyes, were less than human, whose very existence was to be viewed as a scourge. It was, in short, the urge to commit genocide at its most evil. This may not have been a Holocaust in scale, but it was in kind. And for the Israeli nation, born as it was in the shadow of the Holocaust, it can be interpreted no other way. Nor can this be regarded as some isolated episode of anti-Israeli violence. It was the consequence of decades of institutionalized anti-Semitic indoctrination of a population. Indoctrination to the point where such murderous acts become regarded as not merely expedient or tolerable, but as necessary and praiseworthy. Consider, of course, that phone call of one of the Hamas terrorists that the IDF got hold of, calling his parents after he had shot dead many Jews in Israel on October 7th, and he was saying, "Mom, I've become a martyr, and or I've killed Jews," and the parents were celebrating, cheering for joy. Harper continues, "The world, at least we in the West, said of the Holocaust and the forces which unleashed it, never again. Back then, only we could make that pledge. The Jewish people, half annihilated and stateless, could not make it on their own behalf. Today they can act on that pledge, and they rightly ask whether we will honour our own." By the way, that's exactly what I said is the great moral question that lies on the world's head after October 7th. Not the fate of the Jewish people, but the world. Who are the world going to be at this trying moment? Their morality is in question, not Israel's. Harper continues, "From that perspective, Israel's war objective, the elimination of Gaza's Hamas regime, is essential. Leaving the job unfinished, with Hamas's existence tolerated and its actions contained, has been tried and it has failed. Exactly. The Israeli people cannot be reasonably asked to return to the pre-war status quo. That is the position our own nations took towards the attacks launched by Nazi Germany against us. Israel has an absolute right to absolute security now as we did then. Of course, we all wished the war to end, from the ongoing suffering of Israeli hostages and their families to Palestinian children caught in the crossfire. Innocent people on both sides have suffered horribly. So this war should end, and it should end the same way our war with the Nazis did, by the unconditional surrender of its perpetrators." It's so mad that we have to state all these facts. It's so obvious, so straightforward, but it seems that for some in the world, we do need to state these facts. "I say to Israel's friends, stop asking it to stop short of victory. Instead, bring pressure to bear on Hamas directly and through its allies and partners to force its capitulation." These are words from former Prime Minister Harper that Foreign Secretary Lord David Cameron could do with listening to right now, and Prince William for that matter. I don't know why they talk about too many being killed and, we want to see an end to the fighting as soon as possible. Focus on what needs to be done, which is ensuring the international morale and Israeli morale is maintained to continue the defeat of Hamas. After that, as the Second World War also taught us, even harder work begins, making sure we win the peace. Once again, our own experiences as Western democracies should provide guidance. Yes, we helped Germany to rebuild, but we also insisted it deconstruct the ideologies that led to its aggression, and we demanded it fully embrace the ethics of peaceful coexistence. Only then was its sovereignty restored and its membership in the family of free nations affirmed. Now, by the way, I think the way, just to pause the article for a second, I think the way you do this is going to have to be a bit different than Nazi Germany, because we're dealing with the Middle East here, which is religious, and I think it's always going to be religious. And that can be a very good thing. Religion can be a great force for the world. It can also be a force for bad. Depends on how it manifests and how it's taught. But if you want to know more about a path forward to reforming beliefs in the Arab world, have a look at our recent interview with Loe Al-Sharif, a Arab Muslim and peace activist who talks about how he thinks Islam and radical Islam can reform. Prime Minister Harper continues, by that standard alone, suggestions that a victorious Israeli army should simply walk out of Gaza and assume some harmonious two-state solution will emerge out of thin air is insincere and hypocritical. I dare say it is also beyond foolish. That is precisely what Israel was persuaded to do in 2005, and it is why we ended up where we are today. Exactly. What happened with Gaza was a two-state solution. There was a two-state solution, at least a prototype for it. They had their statelet in Gaza, and look what happened. It's not an option anymore, as far as I'm concerned. The Prime Minister Harper continues, a two-state solution will not magically take root now for the same reason it has not happened in every year since 1947. It is rejected by way too many Palestinians. The core problem is not Israel. Yes, there are obstacles in Israel that must be someday overcome, but Israel could have incorporated all Palestinian territory long ago, and it has not done so. I have to say, though, this is where he and I may disagree a bit, because I don't think that. I think, frankly, Israel ceding territory that is Jewish, right? Gaza and the West Bank, Judea and Samaria are actually Jewish territories, but even if they were to, and it would bring peace, we know Israel just can't take that risk anymore to leave security control to the Arabs in Gaza or Judea and Samaria. They can't risk doing that because there's a far too high risk of national suicide occurring as a result. So I think we're going to have to start seeing some shifts in terms of solutions and proposals that are put forward on this front. But anyway, we'll forgive him for that comment, given that is sadly at the moment the Western consensus. But anyway, he says, in contrast, generations of Palestinians have been inculcated with one-state mantras, quote, from the river to the sea, the right of return, settler occupation, and so on. At their heart, they categorically reject the right of a Jewish state to exist on any piece of land of the former mandate for Palestine, of course, because for them it's about Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam, about restoring Islamic control of what they see as probably just southern Syria. They're not really interested in Palestinian nationalism. It's all just made up to destroy Israel. There was no Palestinian nation. There never has been. There never was a flag. Never was a sovereign state there. It's all just a ploy to get rid of Israel. And that's their point. Even if Israel was just had control of one little town in the north, they would still want to wipe it out. The issue here is ideological, it's not a land disagreement. We must stop pretending, he says, that a two-state solution can be pursued in the face of the continued propagation of such a view. Yes, we must develop a roadmap that will lead to a Palestinian state. Not sure about that. And Israel needs to contribute to that. But Israel should not be asked to go down that path as long as such ideologies are allowed to flourish on the Palestinian side. I think part of the problem, though, is that by acknowledging that there is some legitimacy to a Palestinian narrative, which they themselves don't believe in. The Palestinian people themselves, the leaders themselves in the past have said that it's all just a ploy to get rid of Israel, and that's what it's about. So why would we legitimize a cynical ploy to destroy Israel? I'll just quote to you, by the way, Zua Mohsen, who's a senior member of the PLO, in this what he said in 1977. He said, the Palestinian people does not exist. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means of continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for our Arab unity. And I can show you numerous quotes from Palestinian leaders, past and present, all of which said that. So I'm afraid Prime Minister Harper is going to need to get on board and appreciate that point. But Anyway, let's continue. He said, there is an even bigger picture, however, that we in the West must grasp. This war is not an isolated conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. It is the product of a much larger and more dangerous force. Before October 7th, we were on the cusp of a new Middle East. It was being created by a new generation of Arab leaders. Determined to be world-leading societies, they were setting aside their religious hatreds of the past and putting the Abraham Accords in their place. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia itself was deepening its relationship with Israel while continuing an ambitious modernization agenda that remains sadly underappreciated in the West. Yet, even with these developments, some in Western capitals choose to continue seeking reconciliation with an Iranian regime whose vision could not be more different. And so we turned a blind eye to Tehran's continued preaching of medieval jihad and its ongoing construction of a theocratic empire. We watched as it slowly took over Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and of course Gaza. We ignored advice from both Arab and Israeli allies to counter these threats and even criticized actions designed to do so. In this context, the West's support for Israel's war effort goes beyond moral obligations. It is but a small step in responding to a much larger challenge coming at us. I'm not talking just about reoccurrences of 9/11 style terrorism, nor am I referring only to the growing attacks of key international shipping lanes, as alarming as they are. I mean the real, potentially global threat of a powerful regional state that mixes an aggressive and malevolent ideology with the pursuit of nuclear weapons capability. I'm hoping that we understand this bigger picture before it is too late. Almost exactly 10 years ago, I addressed the Israeli Knesset. I said that the Canada I represented would stand with Israel through fire and water. I meant it, and the Canadians I spoke for believe it still, as do hundreds of millions like us all over the world. For we know what history has shown us, that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are always the proverbial canaries in the coal mine. Those who embrace such tribal and sectarian hatreds will invariably, in time, aim their guns well beyond the Jewish people. Indeed, if we open our eyes, we will see that they are already doing so. This is, in short, a time to support Israel with clarity, consistency, and strength, not only because it is right, but because it is in the best interests of global peace and security.